Greetings, Kindles. Today we are doing a Constellation embroidery hoop craft. This is our last craft for this session. So here's everything that you're going to need. You're going to need a hoop. I think this one is 4 inches, 4 or 5 inches should work. Yeah, this one's a 4-inch hoop. The pattern will also work with 5-inch hoop. You're going to need to print out the pattern. You're going to need a Sharpie. An awl or push pin would work too if you have that. Some yellow or gold embroidery floss, whatever color you want the stars to be. A nice kind of thickish navy fabric. You want it to have some weight to it. I've embroidered on thin fabric before. You can do it, but it would be preferable to have something a little bit thick. I think this is a broadcloth. Then you're going to need just one embroidery needle, but this is the pack that I picked up at Walmart. It has all different kinds, so you can pick how pointy you want the tip and how big you want the hole, but we're just going to be using the embroidery style needles today. Then you're going to need a needle threader. There's a couple different styles. This is my favorite right now. I used the old-timey style for a while that has the wire and it's made of foil, but I found that those aren't made as well as they used to be and they kept breaking on me, so I picked this one up and I've been using it ever since. You just poke this little piece through the hole, the eye of your needle, and then you pull the thread through, and it has like a big side and a little side, and so this is what I use, but you can use whatever kind of needle threader you have on hand. And then just some scissors and a spare piece of cardboard. So we are going to get started here. Now this pattern I designed so it could work with a 4-inch or a 5-inch hoop. I was going to make it for a 5-inch. I was going to make my own a 5-inch hoop, but this is what they had at my local craft store. So what you're going to do is, if you have a bigger hoop, you'll use more of these outside stars, and if you have a smaller hoop, you're just going to line it up so that you don't use quite as many of the minor stars for your constellation. So there's more than one way to transfer a pattern, but what we're going, if you have like transfer paper or some transfer pens or chalk, you can use any of those methods you're familiar with, but I just thought I would do it the easiest way with things people probably already have on hand. So I'm going to take this cardboard and set it underneath, and then I'm going to take my awl, but you could also use a thumbtack for this, and I'm just going to pierce the biggest stars first, and I'm going to transfer them to the hoop. So the pattern just shows this is the Little Dipper, not the Big Dipper, and it shows the stars that are the biggest, and then it shows the stars that are little. You don't have to actually follow these star patterns, but we'll talk about that more as we continue. So just, it doesn't have to be exact, but press down, puncture the paper where the big stars are. This is just the easiest way of doing it. And you're going to save this, and after we've embroidered the Little Dipper, we'll punch all these other holes. So don't put that too far away. And then your fabric, if it's as wrinkly as mine was from the fabric store, you might want to iron it. I ironed mine. If it's already flat, then that's kind of unnecessary. It's a step. So you also want, when you cut your fabric, you want it to have some border, because once we put it through the hoop, we're going to gather up the edges and sew them in the back. So you want to make sure you have enough room to be able to do that. So we're just going to center this on the fabric. Actually might cut mine. Get my not sewing scissors here. I'm going to cut it so that I can see where the edges are a little bit better. Just cut it near to the stars. So you can make sure you're centering it on the fabric. So yeah, just gonna go kind of, you can even put the hoop over it, because see, I won't be using that star, so it Doesn't have to be perfect, but you just want to make sure you have room on either side of the hoop, on all sides of the hoop. So I think that will probably work. So then I'm going to take my trusty Sharpie, and this probably isn't the most visible way of transferring a pattern, but it's what I figured everyone would have the supplies for. So then you're just going to make marks within each of the holes for the biggest stars, and we're going to do them first. And keep this on hand so you can look at it. And you can see it. I like to not have the pattern show up too much anyway, because then you sometimes have trouble later on if you didn't cover it completely. I don't know if it will focus for you. But you can just see the little black dots are where all of the stars need to go. So I need to take my sticker off. Well, maybe I'll finish doing that later. It isn't wanting to peel off nicely. So then we're going to put the fabric in the hoop. Just loosen this little, I don't know what that is, screw, bolt, twisty thing. I'm going to loosen that, put the circle underneath the pattern, and again you're going to want to kind of center it, and put this one over. Now this is the pattern that I made because it's like easy and recognizable. You can tell what it is, but if you'd like to do a different constellation, you can find that online and print it out. Let's see, I think I have that a little bit too far down. I always kind of fidget with placements for this. And navy does tend to show up all these little lint very easily, so we'll have to get rid of them at the end, but they will bug me. Let's see. Still want it a little bit more up. It always seems to shift a little bit when you press down. Let's try that. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. So, and then also make sure you have the top where you want it. My hoop is shedding a little bit. They don't make them like they used to. Okay, so this is what I've went with here. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see, but here's the bottom and there's the top. Then I'll have room for some other stars around. So I'm going to press that down and then tighten this back. If you've already done embroidery, you probably don't even need to watch this tutorial, but I'm going to be thorough for anybody who hasn't done this before. But yeah, if you've already done embroidery, you can just go for it. Okay. You can also tighten this by pulling the fabric through. Mine already seems pretty tight, but you want it to be where you can hear. My microphone's down there. It sounds kind of like a drum. I want it to be pretty tight. Okay, that's probably good. And then next, you're going to choose your embroidery floss. I have kind of like a more pastelish gold. I had several different golds to choose from. This is the one that I picked. If you haven't done embroidery before, it comes in like a skein, and the skein will have several threads, and you're going to want to split it up into 2 individual threads. I think it usually comes with 6. Whoops. Usually comes with 6, I believe, and this one I've already taken 1 off of. I don't know if it will focus for me. Well, let's see how we can make this happen. There we go. So now you can kind of see what's going on. You want to just get 2 individual threads like this and separate them out. But I've already taken mine, so I didn't have to fool with that on camera because it can be a little bit fiddly. And I've already threaded my needle, so I'm ready to go. Now, there's a million different ways to do a lot of these techniques. The way that I like to do it is I like to put 2 threads through the needle and have a long tail and a short tail. So this is how I'm going to show you to set it up, but like I said, there's no real wrong way to do it. There's lots of different ways. So now we're going to get started. So I'm going to choose a star, and you can also embroider these however you want. I'm going to do like a star burst pattern. So you're going to come in from the back, and then as you pull it through, be careful not to pull it completely through. So you're going to hold on to that tail until we tie it off in a second. Hold on to the tail. And then I'm going to make my stars kind of spiky. So I'm going to come up about that big. And you'll see once I pull it through. That's going to be one little burst of my star, or one ray. And then on the back, we're just going to tie it off. There's more than one way to do this too, but I'm just going to do a regular overhand knot. Because again, that's the easiest way. Oops, maybe I'm not. It's a little fiddly because the one side is so short. But basically, you're wanting to, whoops, get your needle under, same way you would tie your shoe, and just pull. And I'm going to do it twice. But any kind of knot, so long as it's big enough that it won't pull through the thread, the fabric. Sorry, we're a little out of focus there, but just a regular knot, nothing fancy, just an overhand knot here. And then I'm going to trim the tail. And I'm going to continue on. So you could make these 5-point stars, you could make X's, but I'm going to make all of my little starburst rays come out from the center. So I'm coming back in the same hole, the bottom where that black mark is, and then I'm going to come down about the same distance. I'm wanting mine to look pretty handmade, so I'm not, this part itself is not measured or trying to be perfect at all. And then on the side, I'm going to come out maybe not quite as far. Just, I want my top and bottom rays to be a little bit bigger. You can see what I'm doing here. If it will focus for you. And then I'm going to come back in the center. Right here. And you could just do the 4. I think I'm going to vary mine. Let's see, it's a little hard to get where I can see it and where you can see it. So there's like a basic X star. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to consult my pattern here, and I'm going to make these bigger ones have more bursts and the smaller ones have fewer bursts. So these will be a little bigger and these will be a little bit smaller. So now I'm going to do some fast forward, fast motion and finish these up. And then we'll talk about connecting them to make the actual constellation shape. Now right here I'm stopping to show you that you have to watch your tail because sometimes it'll get a little bit too short. But basically, you want it to be kind of longish so it doesn't slip through, and as you use your thread it will get shorter and shorter, and then at some point you're going to have to tie off and replace your thread. So there's a little forewarning for you because sometimes I get distracted and forget to keep track of my tail. So there we have the basic stars. Let's see if I can get it to focus. There we go. And as you can see, they're not all perfect. They're all kind of pointing different ways, different sizes, as real stars are. And so now we're going to add the lines. And you kind of have a lot of different options here as well. So just do whatever speaks to you. You could do one line between each of the stars, or you could do a dotted line between each of the stars. You could do it 2 threads thick like we've been doing this, or you could go down and use less thread in your needle. Instead of using 2 of the threads, use 1 of the thread to make this a finer line. It's basically, sorry, my camera stopped recording, but it's basically up to you and how you want yours to look. So I think I'm going to try a full line first and see if I like how that looks, and if it doesn't, I'll take the stitch out and I'll do dotted lines. So let's take a look. I think it would look good both ways. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and tie off the back. Just gonna put my thread under and then tie it off. If it gets too short, it's hard to tie it. Again, sorry you can't really see what I'm doing, but it's just like a basic knot, nothing fancy. Okay. So I'm actually gonna use this time while I'm rethreading to do the pattern for the rest of the stars. So let me get my cardboard back out. And so now that I've already done all these, I'm gonna do the little bitty stars. I'm just gonna punch them all because I'm not sure which ones are gonna show within my 4-inch hoop. You could also do these randomly, but this is based on the actual sky, if you're interested in that kind of thing. Did I get that one? Okay, so there we go. We have that ready. Okay, we're gonna put the last of the big, try to decide where I want this to come out of this star. The last of the big Constellation threads. Oops. What have I done? There we go. I went back. So you could stop there, but I'm gonna put the rest of these now. So I'm gonna line it up as best I can. Again, I'm not trying to be perfectly scientifically accurate with this, but this is pretty much lined up with where the Big Dipper is here. And then, where did my Sharpie go? There he is. Okay. So then I'm gonna mark these other stars through the holes. And I'm gonna leave off any that are too close. I can kind of feel the edge of the hoop. You could also kind of fudge it and draw them in closer if you wanted, but I'm gonna start with these and see how that looks, if it's starry enough for me. And for these, I'm just gonna put the little simple crosses. I'm not gonna put as many rays coming out of these stars, so. So that's what I have now. Part of the reason I didn't draw the rest of these is I don't know if you can quite see, but right here, if you put any, this is actually wood underneath, and the closer you get to that wood, the harder it is to sew. So I do think it looks a little bit empty, so I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put 1 or 2 of these stars here, but just a little bit further in than they are in the pattern. And again, with this one over here, I'm just going to kind of move it over a little bit so that it fits onto my hoop. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll show you how to tie everything up. So that's what the back looks like. It's kind of like the constellation of the upside down. And here's what the front looks like. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to, like, sometimes you just use a hoop to embroider something and you frame it, or you put it, you can make a little pillow out of it. You could do whatever you wanted, but in case you want to leave it in the hoop, which is what I'm going to do, is you're going to gather all of these up in the back so that it looks like that, and it hangs on the wall as a nice decoration. So you could use embroidery floss for this. I'm just going to use regular sewing thread. And in this case, I am going to use a different method because I don't want to be chasing my tail while I'm trying to sew up the back. So I've put one thread through the needle, like that. And then I'm going to tie the end, just a knot that is probably a double or triple knot because you want it to be big enough to keep it from going through the fabric. And we're going to gather things up. So here's, this part's a little bit tricky, is you could leave the length, or you could trim it, but if you trim it, it's really easy to trim it too short. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave them long, and we're gonna see how that goes. So take one of your shorter sides, because the corners will be long, so take something from the middle, and you're going to just stick your needle through it. This part doesn't have to be beautiful because you don't see it. And then you're going to do what's called a gathering stitch. Again, if you are an experienced seamstress, you probably don't need this video. So you're coming through the back, and then you're going to the other side, and you're just going to do this over and over and over. And then as you pull, it will tighten up. See that? It gathers it. So it's going to tighten it up. So I'm just going to put this on. I'm going to do this a couple times so you can see that it's so easy. Like, it looks like I'm doing nothing. If you look, it looks like I'm just sewing really long stitches. But then, I may actually need longer thread than this. When you pull, it makes everything go tight. So, and you don't want to go along the edge of the corner. You want to stay close-ish to the hoop. You can kind of do it like this. You don't have to come in and out every time. You can like poke your needle a few times and then pull the thread through. You don't have to keep it completely tight as you work, but it does help if you keep some tightness, or you're gonna run out of thread really quickly. So I'll just put a little bit of a fast forward on this and show you how to tie it off. So I guess I've been sewing too long because my my camera cut out on me. Hopefully you didn't miss too much, but basically I finished this, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim these tails off now because I know where it's safe to do so. So don't come too close to your stitches, but you can just take off some of that extra fabric, because sometimes that makes it not want to lay nicely against the wall. Okay, so that's your basic gathering stitch, and you're going to want to pull it tight. And then sometimes what you want to do, depending on your fabric and the way your stitch is going, is you can just put some extra stitches in. So like this part pokes up a little bit, so I'm going to go through that and pull, and then I'm going to come across and just do like a few across the circle to make sure everything's tight as you want it to be. So just a few of those. And leave yourself enough thread to really tie everything off. And then you just hang it by this little doodah right here. So that's it. I'm looking forward to seeing all of your constellation embroideries. Like I said, you can do this one or you can pick any other constellation that you like. And make sure you post them in the treehouse and on Instagram. I have to get a little lint brush after it, now that I'm done. Post them in the treehouse and on Instagram, #WeAreTheKindles. And we're going to keep on working on badges through the end of October, and then we'll have a closing campfire ceremony and a little survey to see how we might want to do things for our next camp session, which is probably going to be in January. So that's all for now, and I'll see you over in the campsite. Cheers!